Good evening, everyone. Coming to you from Santa Fe, New Mexico. I'm Scott Harrison, Artistic Director of Ironweed Productions, and I want to welcome you to Talking Theater Santa Fe, a series of conversations between me and Santa Fe theater artists, sharing stories about their experiences in the theater and the unique paths that led them to creating theater in Santa Fe. I'm very honored to have as my guest this evening, Santa Fe lighting designer and a true gentleman of the Santa Fe theater community, Skip Rapoport. Skip, thanks so much for joining me tonight.
My pleasure.
A little bit more about Skip before we get started. Skip Rapoport has designed lighting in New York, Los Angeles, and many points in between. At New York's American Place Theater and Dance Theater Workshop, Los Angeles's Vanguard Theater and Schoenberg Hall, and Chicago's Body Politic Theater. His clients have included the Acting Company, Mark Taper Forum's New Theater for Now, Donald Byrd and the Group, and Nevada Dance Theater. In Santa Fe, he's designed for the Lensic Performing Arts Center, Theater Work, Theater Grotesco, Ironweed, the International Shakespeare Center, New Mexico Actors Lab, and many others. Skip is especially proud of his work with New Mexico School for the Arts, Santa Fe Prep, and Just Say It Theater, working with the next generation of theater artists. Skip also serves on the board of Teatro Paraguas. So Skip, when I was thinking about our conversation, I was actually remembering back to when we first met, which was about 17 years ago when we were doing our first production of Fool for Love. And I walked into Hogel's theatrical supply, and we needed a lighting effect to create the look of an explosion and fire going on outside the hotel room. And anyway, you were there, and I told you, I said, I don't know how this might work, but this is what we need. And you gave us what you needed. It was a little, I don't know if you remember, it was a little instrument that kind of rotated around and had this, it created the effect of fire.
A little fire effect light. We had we had an inventory of effect lights, mostly for parties and things like that. And we just happened to have a nice fire effect, a nice water effect, and I thought of the fire effect immediately for you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was the beginning of just many years of working together and also watching your work. And you've actually you designed one of our Shepherd productions that Mona Malik directed, Buried Child. Yeah, it was fun to think back to to that first time meeting you. And speaking of kind of first times, I was just curious, were you when you were growing up, was make-believe or kind of storytelling, was that something that you were intrigued with at a young age, or?
Yeah, I had a rich and active fantasy life as a child, but I didn't really think about. Well, actually, when in grade school, we had the school play, and I was usually in, and I usually had a fairly large role because I could memorize all the lines, which was a pretty big thing. So, but I didn't really get an acting bug. High school, I did join the theater group, and did a little bit of performing, but started tinkering around with lights, and that was actually my first exposure to sort of the technical side of theater.
So, and what was kind of your first experience with lighting? I mean, was it what drew you in initially?
Well, I helped out with the at the time the little theater program had basically a director and a technical director, and for some reason I just enjoyed helping out with the tech aspects a little bit, and a little bit of construction and helping with the lights, and they were doing some renovations to the old space, and which we were doing. And I just, I still have this memory of us poking new holes in the ceiling and being on top of a ladder and watching a star drill go flying through a hole in the ceiling right right in front of my face. But I
Wow.
kept going anyway. Um, so and that experience came back to haunt me a few years later in college when I actually went from liberal arts into fine arts and joined the theater department at Illinois.
Yeah. And so, what do you remember kind of what it was about design, lighting design that intrigued you initially? And
I just, you know, I found something fascinating. This was back in, again, when I was back in high school, something about, being able to change the look of things or control how things looked and where people looked. I just sort of remember that really being sort of a cool thing. Um, when I was when I went to college, I was actually a political science major. About a semester in, discovered that I had absolutely no interest in political science. I'd been hanging out with some theater people that they were like this little independent theater company that I'd sort of latched onto,
Yeah.
um, when I realized that I just really needed to get out of poli sci, I thought, well, I did that. I enjoyed doing the theater in high school. I enjoyed doing lighting, and I like these people. So I'll go talk to the theater department and see if I can get in. In a nice piece of timing, this is University of Illinois opened a $22 million theater complex, and bear in mind this was back in the late 60s, early 70s. So that was a
Mhm.
lot of money. And it
Yeah.
was their second year it was open, and they were grasping to get design and tech people. They had carried over an acting program from the previous space, but they'd
Mhm.
expanded. And I remember speaking with one of I think she was, no, she wasn't the department chair, but she was up there and saying I wanted to transfer into the theater department. And when she asked me what I wanted to do, I said, well, I'm thinking lighting and technical theater. And I could see her like a sigh of relief that I wasn't another actor.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
they really needed tech and design students.
Yeah.
So it was like, well, welcome aboard.
That's cool.
And here we are today.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because I don't have a lot of experience with lighting, uh, but I did when my first professional theater experience was with a touring company, National Players out of DC,
Hmm.
and we were self-contained once we went on the road. So there were 12 of us, and we all had parts in the two different plays that we were in, and then we all had technical jobs. And one of my tech jobs was when we went into the spaces was to hang and focus. It was on the hang and focus crew, and I
Hmm.
just loved. For me, I loved that job, and I loved just learning, just getting a sense of the intricacies that are involved in lighting design. I mean,
Hmm.
and it was interesting too because we were doing a tour, and so we had the lighting trees, that
Hmm.
we'd set up in the, or is that what or what's the technical is that what the, or booms or
That'll
whatever,
work.
but that we would set up in the wings. And but I just, yeah, I just gained such an appreciation for, as I said, the intricacies um of what's involved in lighting design. And as I was thinking about that too, I was just wondering, with your experience, because I know you've designed in many different venues, and you've also designed with a touring company, with the acting company.
Mhm.
Could you talk a little bit about what the difference is designing for like a production that's going to be in that venue versus like a touring show?
Well, particularly a lot of the work that I do in Santa Fe, so much of it is in black box like type theaters or theaters or non-traditional spaces. You know, there's no fly loft, there's not fixed electrics. And so, you know, when you're designing in that type of space, it's like, okay, well, I want to have a light sort of coming from that direction, and I'll look up in the air and go, okay, there's a pipe over there. That's where I can hang my light.
Yeah.
So it's you know, it's sort of a good thing, bad thing. You know, it's the space defines you know, how you're going to have to light up to a certain point. Your
Mhm.
you know how you know, your level of flexibility, and you know, there's usually no wing space, so you can't get that angle, you know, way off in the side that you might be able to get in a larger space. So you know, you make do with what you have, and most of the time you're also your equipment is limited, so you have to be very efficient in your design.
Yeah.
You know, I've worked. I've only lit the Lensic once. I worked backstage for quite a while, but I've only designed one show there. It was a joy. It was
Mhm.
like, oh, you have all these lights. Okay, I'll use that one. I'll use that one. I'll use
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and a great crew. And it was just a pleasure.
Mhm.
For most of the last few years, I've done one. At least I've done one show a year, usually at the James A. For usually for NMSA.
Mhm.
And again, it's a pleasure. It's a very well equipped, very well maintained theater with, you know, with up to date equipment, and it's just, you know, it's a joy.
Yeah.
Everything I need is there, and it's where, and everything is where I need it to be. And but that being said, there's a great pleasure I get from working with, you know, stripped down spaces, the Paragua spaces or the Playhouse,
Yeah.
or well, now it's the New Mexico Actors Lab Theater, but the Adobe Rose slash Swan slash
Yeah.
NMAL. There's a certain challenge in making the best use of what's available,
Mhm.
and just sort of, you know, squeezing the best possible design out of it.
Yeah.
Um, and that's I get a great deal of pleasure and satisfaction from doing a lot with nothing, essentially.
Yeah.
Um, but a lot of that, now that goes back to what I consider, you know, my wonderful postgraduate experience.
Mhm.
After I finished at Cal Arts, I moved to New York,
Yeah.
and managed to get the job touring with the acting company as their lighting person. And at that time, the acting company did not carry their own lighting equipment,
Mhm.
other than some color and, you know, two or three instruments for emergencies.
Yeah.
And so at the one of the shows we did, um, we opened in New York with the production of King Lear, which was directed by John Houseman, and I was the assistant to the lighting designer on that.
Mm.
And it was, you know, a pretty heavy New York lighting plot with,
Mm.
you know, 5 or 6 electrics and hundreds of fixtures. And, you know, the first thing we did once we left New York is I cut that lighting plot in half,
Mm.
because I knew I was never going to get that much equipment on the road and
Yeah.
never have the time to hang and focus that much equipment. After the first stop, I took my plot that was half and I cut that one in half.
Yeah.
And the ongoing challenge was to get the look and the feel of the original New York production with, you know, 20-25% of the available equipment,
Yeah.
and the reality of getting to the theater at 9 in the morning and opening at 7:30 that night.
Yeah.
So learning to do that, to you know, get the best possible look with the minimum equipment and get it as fast as possible, is a tremendous educational experience, which
Yeah.
carries over to everything I do today. I mean, you've worked with me. I want, when I get into the theater, I need to have everything together.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to waste the cast's time. I don't want to be there at 3 a.m. setting levels.
Yeah.
I want to get in there. I want to get it done. And then, over the next couple of days, make it look as good as possible. So that comes out of, so much of that comes out of that touring experience.
Yeah. Well, you've worked, yeah, I mean, you just worked such magic in just numerous venues in Santa Fe. And it's really interesting to see both watching productions that you've lit and then working with you as a director on production, just how you um how you maximize what you have. I
Mhm.
mean, and really create magic with that. That's really interesting about the touring experience. I know for me, I felt like that the touring experience for me was that same kind of thing. It was such an incredible educational experience to have that as kind of the first professional experience. And I think um, there was something too with that for me, that the touring experience that was I loved, which was that 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 was your job. Like you would travel to a new place, and that was your okay, we're going to go in, we're going to get the theater loaded in, we're going to go in and do our show, take our show down, we're going to drive to the next place. There was something really, just this really wonderful distilled quality to life, at that, because that was, your job was very defined, was very defined. Did you have any particular, in the places you traveled, places that you just were more drawn to than others, or?
Um, I'm trying to remember which school it was. It was in, I think it was Raleigh, North Carolina, and it must have been UNC because it wasn't Duke. We did do Duke, but
Yeah.
I think it was UNC. And it was, it was a nice theater. It was reasonably well equipped, but and again, remember this is in the late 70s. And they had, if you remember, the auto transformer boards with 6 individual dimmers and one master handle that all with a mechanical lock on it.
Mm-hmm.
And their lighting board was basically a wall of these little auto control 6-channel dimmers.
Yeah.
And the board operator was 6 students from the school. And they didn't miss a single cue.
Wow.
It was amazing that, just it was such a pleasure just, watching these people just with, even at that time, that was, fairly primitive equipment, but getting again, sort of, getting pulling the show out of the equipment,
Yeah.
it was just, just pleasure working with that level of dedication. And it is something students have. It's just, they're there for love.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Well, and I know yeah, because that's something that is really important to you, is working with young people.
Mhm.
What do you find working with young theater artists? What do you find is kind of most fulfilling about your work with young folks?
Um, the joy, I think.
Mm,
I think if I had to pick a word, they're just loving what they're doing.
mhm.
It's they're still, they're learning, they're still experimenting, they're still developing, and they're just, they're just having such a good time.
Yeah.
um, it's I mean that, I do shows almost every year for Santa Fe Prep and for NMSA. It's a different experience because NMSA is really a pre-professional training program.
Hmm.
Santa Fe Prep is, it's the theater class. It's not even a theater department, and it's so there is in NMSA, that's sort of, the serious possibility that that's what these kids are going to do for a living. And this is the
Mm-hmm.
direction they're going to continue in. Santa Fe Prep, they're having a good time. And there's some excellent work done in both. The last show I did when the pandemic was starting, which literally closed March 1st, was a production of In the Heights at Santa Fe Prep. And when Brad, the theater teacher there, told me, well, we're doing In the Heights, and I didn't want to say anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It really seemed like, I mean, he has had, the years I've worked with him, he's reached very far, and he's
Mm-hmm.
usually gotten there, and it's very impressive. But I was really thinking, maybe you're reaching a little too far on this one. And he wasn't. It was absolutely wonderful.
Oh gosh.
I was thinking, when during those dark days when I was thinking, well, am I ever going to do another show ever?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
It occurred to me at one point that if that's the last show I do, that's not a bad way to go out. The kids did an exceptional job. Brad did an exceptional job. Chris Ishii and the band. Everyone was really proud of everyone else on it. So
That's wonderful.
it's just, it makes you feel good for the future of the theater that these, some of these kids are going to go on and they're going to be in the business and they're going to do
Yeah.
good work. So.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Yeah, no, I always feel like working with young people too. They've just got that yeah, they just got that hunger, that just is so great to be
Mhm,
around. I mean, it's
mhm,
just um yeah, that's what a great story. Yeah, I love uh what Brad has done there, and then Joey and Barbara and everybody, and Charles at New Mexico
mhm,
School for the Arts,
yeah.
and Kate. Yeah, it is cool in Santa Fe. I just feel like there's a real, just fertile, talented group of young folks.
Mhm.
Um, that's cool. Do you, in terms of your process of approaching a play, when you design a play,
Mhm.
do you have kind of a typical process that you go about in terms of, you read the play, you start visualizing, or does it depend on the
Uh,
play?
it To a certain degree, it depends on the play, and it depends on how the director is approaching things. I have found that my personal process has changed over the years. As much as possible now, I try, unless the director specifically asked me to read it so we can discuss it, I try to wait until the table read before I really read the play. I've
Interesting.
discovered that hearing it is much more informative than reading
Mm,
it.
mm,
I mean, there's always, there's going to be some visualization that comes from reading the play, but just hearing it, it seems to, I start more quickly getting a sense of what I might want to do when I'm hearing it.
mhm,
I think that lets me see it better, that I can
mhm.
hear it.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting.
Oh.
Do you start immediately kind of getting visuals as you're hearing it, or does it kind of percolate or it probably depends.
It's different with every play.
Yeah.
There are some plays that I immediately get a sense of how I'm going to want it to look. Other ones, I mean, I remember a play which I still call, I sort of consider it the best play that nobody saw in Santa Fe, which was a show called Yemaya's Belly, which Paraguas did. And I read the script, and I remember reading the script and going, how in the hell are we going to do this show? It's insane. Parts of it take place underwater.
Wow.
A big section of it takes place on the ocean. The scene changes were insane.
Yeah.
And Alex Hudson directed. And after really talking with her and listening to it, and I went, oh, okay, that's how we're going to do this. That's how I'm going to do my part of this. And it was a wonderful show. That, if you'd asked me, a month or two before it opened, how we were going to do it, I would have gone, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every show has its own process of design development. Something in the show, sort of like the hook. What is it?
Yeah.
What do I hang my design on?
Yeah.
For this show, and it's different for every show.
That's interesting. Yeah, it makes me think of it's kind of a similar process I find with a character. As you said, you kind of find an anchor or a hook, and like, oh, this is, and as you said, it's different for everyone, and the timing is different for each when it happens, and that's interesting. Do you find that you get more satisfaction from those kind of plays where you're like, how the hell am I going to design this, and you find that way through, or
there's definitely some satisfaction from that sort of aha moment.
Yeah.
When I go from having no idea what I'm going to do to suddenly knowing exactly what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Some shows, and sometimes it's just a moment in the show that it's well, like the most recent one, if you think back to Water by the Spoonful. The last moment in the show when they blow the ashes, when they throw the ashes into the air. And Vali Rivera, the director, basically said to me, and you're going to do something absolutely incredible and magical at this point. I'm not sure that's a direct quote, but that's pretty close.
No pressure, but
no pressure. No. Well, I've worked with Vali actually quite a few times, and so she's allowed to say stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I realized that she was right. That moment had to be something amazing.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what I was going to do. And finally, I came up with an idea and sort of, okay, I'm going to set this up and maybe it's going to work. And we looked at it and we went, this is going to work.
Yeah.
And it's one of my favorite moments. If I had pick individual moments of shows that really made me happy, that I really did something wonderful. That's one of them. That was a gasp from the audience type of moment. But it was also exactly what it needed to be. So it wasn't like, it wasn't about the lighting. It was still about the show. And those moments, that's so much fun to just find that.
Yeah.
Just find something that nobody expected.
Yeah.
Including yourself. It's like, I think this is going to look great, but I don't know.
Right.
And be able to go, yeah, okay, that's good. It's very
that must be such a good feeling.
It's very satisfying.
Yeah. And that moment was so stunning. Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Do you find I'm always, like when I talk to actors, I'm always interested in, kind of what that feeling was the first time they were on stage, or what that, feeling was
Mhm.
Do you find as a lighting designer, when you design a show that you're particularly proud of and you come to opening night, what
Mhm.
is that experience like for you to watch the
Um,
show?
well, it definitely feels good to know that as I think for any artist or performer, to be able to look at something you've done and say, yeah, it's good. I did good. I will pat myself on the back. It makes it justifies the time and the effort um, of everybody involved,
Mhm.
because there's not that much joy in having done a beautiful job lighting a terrible show. Um,
Yeah,
it's a group process, as we all know,
yeah.
and the most satisfaction comes from the complete package. You know, yes, okay, maybe I did a beautiful job lighting, but I lit a beautiful set, and on that beautiful set, there's some remarkably talented actors who were very well directed, and we have done something good here. It's not just I've done something good.
Mhm.
It's everybody involved.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a special feeling. Um, and I know it's like when you I know too when I have that feeling, I think, man, um I just never want to take those times for granted either, because
Mhm.
yeah, it's such
Yeah.
a good feeling.
Yeah, it's funny. I've discovered that nobody reads the program. Anytime I go to a play, somebody, and usually somebody I know, will come up to me after the show and say, "Oh, did you do the lighting?" No. Did you read the program? No.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
It's sort of assumed. Oh, Skip's in the theater. He must have done the lighting.
right,
No, I go
right,
and see shows. I
right,
don't
right,
have anything to do with it. It's
right. Yeah, that's
it's sort of getting credit for for things I didn't do, and a long time ago I accepted the fact that a lot of people who see my work have no conscious knowledge of having seen my work.
hmm.
um, you know, a lot of people who go to the theater, they're not really consciously aware of the lighting, um, and that's okay. They don't have to be.
Yeah,
Um, on a certain level, it's part of what they're seeing, whether they're conscious of it or not. And
yeah,
I'm okay if people leave the theater and don't really realize, oh, there was lighting, and
uh-huh,
some guy did it, and that's okay. It's part. It comes with the job.
yeah,
Um, to a certain degree, I think it's common also, like with the sound designer.
hmm,
Um, somebody can do, Dan
yeah,
Pybron does beautiful work, and
yeah,
I'm sure a large percentage of the people who leave shows that he did weren't consciously aware of the sound design, and I'm sure with him it's okay too.
yeah,
It's The show is very rarely about the lighting. Um,
yeah. But it's interesting how I know for me, what one of the things I've learned and what's just been wonderful about, in directing a show and working with the different designers is seeing how a specific choice just resonates. So you really see how, oh no, it wasn't here, it was here, or it wasn't done this way, it was this way. And because it was done this way, you have the feeling that you have, or you have
mhm,
it brings about the emotion or and just seeing how that specificity is created that often, as you said, the audience isn't even aware of is
mhm.
really, really fascinating. And I love the times that we've worked together. One of the things I really love about your process too is that um, there's just always this open feeling of communication. Like, this is what I'm thinking, and this is
Mhm.
what I wanted to try, and oh, I thought I might try it this way, and it's just, and so I always just feel like I'm just have this open window into what you're experimenting with,
Mhm.
and then it's anyway. I love that element of it, that it's just such an open door in terms of communicating ideas back and forth. And you're always sharing where you are in the process and what you're trying. Did you, with your process of working with directors, is that something that evolved over time, or?
Um, yeah, I want to make, it doesn't take more than really, and this is one of the things I learned back I really learned at Cal Arts is I worked with a director named Lou Palter, who's still around, although I don't think he's teaching anymore.
Mhm.
And the first year I was in, this was grad school. So the first year I was assigned to do a show with him. And at that time I was doing sets and lights because
Mhm.
that's what they wanted me to do. And we fought tooth and nail. And, there were things I wanted to do and he didn't like them. And I find that's when it got hammered into my head that, um, it's not the lighting designer show, it's the director's show. Um, Unless, of course, the lighting designer is producing the show and hired the director, which I don't think ever happens. Um, it's not my show. So if I'm doing something the director doesn't like, I change what I'm doing. If I can't if I can't demonstrate to the director that what I want to do is going to look even better, um, director wins. That's end of discussion.
Mhm.
Um, and so, while I will still come into a show with a sense of what I want to do, I want to make sure that it's in sync with what the director's vision. Now, I've been fortunate to work with a lot of directors many times, and what develops from that is trust.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, I've ended up doing, I don't know, 12, 13 shows for Benny.
Mhm.
Um, and we hardly even have to talk about the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have a little bit of discussion going
Yeah.
in, and then when we get to tech, which is about the next time we talk about the lighting, if he has, he'll fine tune what he wants to see, and I will do what he wants. Um, just in terms. Oh, speaking of working with Benny,
Mhm.
um, so I love it when life gives you a full circle.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Um, the first show that I designed as a graduate student at California Institute of the Arts, the director was Robert Benedetti. The costume designer was Cheryl Odom.
Yeah, that's something.
Um, so here we are.
That is, yeah, that is something.
Yeah, we took a few years between shows,
Yeah,
and that's just so cool.
that is, yeah. To have that length of history with, yeah, that is very cool. Yeah.
And and we get along just, like I said, first show I did for Benny in Santa Fe was Sylvia at the Playhouse.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've done every show for every season of New Mexico Actors Lab.
Mm-hmm.
And we just work together really well.
Yeah.
It's an effortless teamwork. So it
Yeah,
works pretty
that's,
good.
well, as you said too, it just must feel really good to kind of your first seminal experience as a lighting designer was with him, and now you know, you all are working together really, continuously, which is really, that's wonderful.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that kind of, yeah, shorthand that you can get to with just
Mhm.
working together of like, oh, what, and if, can we do the, oh yeah, and then it's done. You don't even have to complete a sentence, because you're
Mhm.
on the same. Yeah, that's really nice. Um, you shared me some things about your, just about your life and and kind of just experiences that you had, and one that I was just curious about was with Teatro Paraguas, which, because I'm not familiar with this, so I just wanted you to, the Teatro Paraguas musical Piñata Orchestra in 2019. What what what
Um, so, um, Teatro Paraguas, of which I am a board member,
yeah.
and I mean that's a story in itself. We'll come back to that, but so they do. There's a few things that they do every year. They do a Day of the Dead production,
Mhm.
and they do the musical Piñata, which is the Christmas show. Um, and they have, it's got, the cast of dozens, and from very small to very young to very old, and a live band. And in 2019, the guy who had been, actually they had a couple guitar players, and for various reasons neither one of them were available. And so, it's like, if you never let people know what you can do, because at some point or another they're going to ask you to do it.
Yeah.
And I do play guitar, and so they asked if I would, join the band, and I went, "Oh, sure." And boy, was that a lot of fun!
That's great.
That was just delightful. And the band was a lot of a number of board members, and some people who had regularly worked with Paraguas, and friends of people who had worked with the Paraguas.
Yeah.
And it sounded pretty good. And it was just a whole lot of fun. And the show was a whole lot of fun. It's a shame that they did do a Zoom version of Musical Pinata this year. It really wasn't the same. I mean, it was
Yeah.
fun. But yeah, no, I'd do that again in a minute if they asked me to do that.
That's great.
That was as much fun as I had in who knows how long. So,
That is, wow, how fun. It's funny you're just talking about like playing a stringed instrument. One of the things that I've been doing over the COVID times, I started a few years ago. Just I've always wanted to learn how to play the banjo because my dad
mhm,
played when I was young, and he played guitar and banjo, but I just was always loved the sound of the banjo. So a few years ago I bought one. I was like, I took some lessons, and then I kind of got to a point where I had a book that my teacher gave me where I could kind of progress on that, for a while,
mhm,
which is what I've been doing. So over COVID, I said, I just want to pick it up because I've never played a stringed instrument. So just the kind of getting the dexterity of your fingers is
mhm,
something for me that's just a huge learning curve. But
mhm.
I said, I want to take, if it's 5 minutes a day, I just want to make sure that I pick it up.
Yeah.
And it has really been interesting. I mean, it's slow, but I have noticed just by picking it up a little bit a day that
Mhm.
you kind of start noticing a difference. Like, oh, no,
Oh,
I
yeah.
can go from this chord to this chord. I couldn't do that before, and I can,
No.
I can. Anyway, it's been a really fun thing to
Well,
explore.
I hadn't been playing for a while, and
Uh,
so when they approached me and I said I'd be happy to do it, I realized that I had to basically get my fingers back in shape.
mm,
I had no calluses at all on my left hand anymore,
mhm.
and so I had to start playing every day, and then sometimes take a day off and rebuild the calluses so it didn't hurt like hell every time I played. And just doing that, it was started, I'd gotten out of practice and it was, awkward at first. And I kept trying to do things that I knew I used to be able to do. And for some reason I couldn't do them anymore. And
Mhm.
by the time, the show opened, it was like, oh yeah, yeah, I'm doing this again. This is great.
That's, yeah,
It comes back,
yeah,
and the dexterity comes back. So yeah, the answer to that is, yeah, that you get better the more you do.
yeah, yeah,
So if you're enjoying it, keep doing it.
yeah, yeah.
Other than your wife, nobody else is listening right now. So
I know, yeah, yeah, yeah.
she's probably going to be too polite to complain. So
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. Well, you said that your story about becoming a board member was an interesting one. So I'm curious, how did your becoming a Teatro Prague's board member come about?
well, so if you remember Teatro Paraguas, what is that? I think it was 15 years last year. I think it was the
Mm,
quinceañera. For much of that time, they did not have space. They were just like
yeah.
many other companies in Santa Fe. They were a theater company with no home, and they would find a space and do a show. And I knew I knew the people, a lot of the people in the company through Hogel's. They worked there or they came in there, and I'd go to see what they were doing, and they had just this wonderful energy that really took me back to the things that I did when I was in college outside of the university theater department.
Mm, hmm,
Um,
yeah.
I was at Illinois. I did lighting for a group that performed at this local, wasn't really a church, but it was sort of a church-like place, and they
Mhm.
had a space for performances, and it was just a group of theater students, but it was outside of the it was like, we're here to learn theater and to do theater, but we also want to do our own stuff. And it had that energy, and the
Yeah,
stuff at Progress had that energy of, we have to be doing this,
yeah,
which was just delightful. And then they made the choice to rent a space and create their own theater. And at that point, that's when I was approached, could I come in and sort of like be treasurer for a while and keep the books just temporarily, and then Jeff will learn how to do it and he'll take it over,
mhm,
and then you can leave. What was that, 10 years ago?
yeah, yeah.
um, and there have been, a lot of changes, some people, when you take a company that doesn't have a home and then you suddenly have the responsibilities of sustaining a building, it changes the dynamic considerably. Um, it worked for some people, it didn't work for other people. And so
Mm,
some people left, some people stayed on, new people joined up,
yep,
and it's still a thriving company. And, I'm still having a good time being there. So that's sort of my main criterion is, am I having a good time?
yeah, yeah, that's great.
I had retired from lighting design twice, for
Mm,
different reasons.
mhm,
And I think it was 2000, 2001, somewhere around
hmm,
there. I
mhm,
was uh, I was working at Hogel's, and Mary, who was using Evans at that time, Mary Evans, now going by Mary Muir, I think. Anyway, she worked in the makeup department of the store.
Mhm.
And she came up to me and, I'd made the mistake of saying that I used to be a lighting designer. Um, and she said, so I'm stage managing this show and we don't have a lighting designer and you have to do this. So I sort of went, yeah, why not? Give it a shot.
Yeah.
The show was Eyes for Consuela, Sam Shepard. Vali Rivera directed. And I discovered that freed from the pressure of trying to make a living as a lighting designer, um, it was probably the best work I'd done in I don't know how many years.
Huh.
And
Mhm.
I had a good time doing it.
Mhm.
So from that point, I decided, okay, I will go back to doing lighting design, but it will be plays that I want to do with people I want to work with,
Mhm.
where more than likely I will have a good time doing it. And for the most part, I've been able to hold to that. There have been a couple of instances where basically I was whoring. It was
Mhm.
like, will you
Mhm.
please do this show? We'll pay you a lot of money and it'll be over pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the best part of the show is that it was over pretty quickly. So,
Yeah.
and the check cleared. But I
Right.
try, I'm fortunate in that I have not, had to depend on the income from being a lighting designer. I have,
Mhm.
other things that help me live.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm still having a good time and working
That's
with
great.
people I like working with. So there you go. Can't
That's
ask
a
for more than that.
Yeah. 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 That's nice. Yeah. And I think it's one things I love about Santa Fe is just there's that feeling of you can do projects with people that care about the projects that you love working with, and just have some really just incredibly rewarding um, experiences that, as you said, that you can just that are fun. I mean, for me too, that's the same thing. If I'm not having fun, um, yeah, why? That's the you want to love
Yeah,
what you're doing.
we're just not getting paid enough to not
Yeah,
have a
to
good
not
time.
have fun. I know. Yeah, well, that's a great. I didn't see Isaac Winsuelo was right before Lisa and I moved here, so I didn't get to see
Ah,
that production. But
well,
um,
that was Nico Ballas, Argos, Oscar, Vanessa,
Vanessa, yeah, I remember yeah,
um,
and Vali directed. Yeah.
and Karen Paramanandam did the set design.
Oh, okay, yeah, great.
um, it was like many of Vali's works, you know, um, flawed but worth it. Vali as a director always is trying to do something amazing.
Yeah,
Sometimes she gets there. Sometimes, for one reason or another, it doesn't quite make it to amazing, but you can sense what she's going for,
yeah,
and that always makes it a pleasure to work with her.
yeah.
Um,
That's yeah,
and
yeah,
anyway,
yeah. Her
after that,
vision is just what's that?
and I was going to say after Eyes for Consuelo, so okay, I'll do more of this.
Yeah, nice, nice. Yeah, that's great.
So there were a few years after that that I did, almost every show at the Playhouse for a while.
Mhm.
Not every show, but it seemed like every other show for a while.
Yeah, 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 yeah. With your work with on the board at Paraguas, and there, you all are doing just incredible things during this
Mhm.
pandemic. You all Argos and all of you at Paraguas have been just incredibly generous to Ironweed over the years. Our last three shows have been there. We worked twice in the second space, which is just a joy.
Mhm.
Um, I wonder what for folks that maybe aren't aware of Teatro Progress, or people that are, that want to know what's happening, where can folks go to learn more? Or
Well, oh, good. Let's time for a commercial. So teatroparaguas.org is our website. We have recently sort of done I don't know if partnership's the right word, but we're working with a group called XERB, XERB, which is they are a website that is the home for the online home for all kinds of organizations, film festivals, theater companies, musical groups. And so we have a channel basically on XERB, and you can, you pay a nominal amount to access the channel, and you can see whatever it is that we have on there. We've been trying to get as much done as we can on Zoom or on YouTube, and gotten it, and then we post it on XERB, so it's available for, I guess a limited amount of time, but for a reasonable amount of time. And we're just trying to keep things going. We've got a show coming up Friday. It's I think it's a 10-minute one act, a piece that Alex wrote, which apparently, I didn't know this, apparently it was written for your
yeah,
for your show
creating a scene.
at Second Street.
She submitted that for that. Yeah.
So that's going to be done Friday, and then we have another Valentine show coming up, Sunny Day, and then other people are working through our ages. I guess Talia's got a show coming up soon. We just did a Robert Benjamin piece, which was very well received. And I guess, sort of the good side is that even though we're not doing stuff in the theater with a live audience, if for the most part, when you are doing shows in the theater, if you don't make it to the theater before the show closes, well, you're out of luck.
Yeah.
Now, if you can't make it to the live Zoom broadcast, well, it's still there online somewhere.
Yeah.
And in our case, we keep links on the website. Here's what we've done recently. Here's what you can still see, and here's how you go and see it. So yeah, I mean, I theater on your computer monitor or on your phone is obviously not the same thing as theater in a theater. But if you're jonesing for theater, it's still there.
Yeah.
And it's still, it may very well have been recorded live, and it's the people that under normal circumstances you'd pay the money for a ticket and you'd go see them. So you can still do that.
Yeah. Well, you all are really doing innovative stuff. Yeah. So yeah, teatroparaguas.org, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
And we have a Facebook page,
yeah.
like a few other people have Facebook pages.
Yeah.
We do too. And yeah, so you can always find us. And of course, Theater Santa Fe has links to things, and provides publicity for everybody. So it's nice to see, this is something that, my 20 odd years of theater in Santa Fe, seeing the theater companies cooperating more and collaborating more is really nice to see.
I agree.
It's used to, how many times have you basically every show opens at the same time. And if you're in one show, you can't see somebody else's show, right, because you're performing the same time they are. And I think there's a little bit less of that going on now, and I think it'll continue that way once we're actually back in the real theaters again.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
I know that at Paraguas we've been really, working as much as possible with the other companies. I mean, anything,
Yeah.
we basically, the second space was built for Ironweed, essentially. And, finding, being the home for New Mexico Actors Lab for a few years, and now they found their own home, which is great.
Yeah.
Um, we have been talking with Robin over at the Playhouse about ways that we can work cooperatively. And I think one of the things we're looking for, and hopefully it will happen. When you think about it, the Playhouse has a 100-seat theater,
Mhm.
and we have two basically 50-seat spaces, and the Playhouse would like to do shows where maybe they don't want to try to fill a 100-seat
Mhm. Yeah.
auditorium.
Yeah.
And maybe they'd like to do a show that would be more comfortable in a 50-seat space.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, Paragus might like to have the ability to try to fill a 99-seat space.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, that's nice.
being able to
Right.
trade back and forth like that could be just could be wonderful for everybody involved.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, no, I think it's a very, it's just, yeah, it's just a wonderful collaborative spirit amongst companies in Santa Fe, which is just a really great thing.
Mhm.
Um, I wanted to actually just, for my last question for you, it's actually not a theater question, but big congratulations that you are recently married, and you got married during the pandemic. And I
Yes, we
just
did.
wanted you, what was that, experience like? Getting,
Well, so um, we had talked about getting married for a while. And to the point where we both sort of picked out rings we liked and ordered our own rings. I'm not sure if that's sufficiently romantic or not, but that's the way we work.
yes.
And then sort of the pandemic hit, and I was, well, I guess we're going to have to put this off for a while. Um, but we still wanted, we wanted to go through and make that happen. And so I started doing a little research. I guess the first question was, is there any way you can get married virtually in Santa Fe County? And the answer is no, there is not.
Hmm.
Um, you have to, there are certain aspects of it that have to be done in person with signatures and witnesses and all that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
But the more I looked into it, the more it actually seemed like it would be possible. We were able to arrange, fortunately, we didn't want to do a big wedding. It's not the first wedding for either one of us.
Mhm.
So what I discovered is that while your options were a lot more limited, they were actually sort of condensing into some pretty good options. The courthouse I discovered, the county building, because of the pandemic, they weren't letting you in unless you had an appointment because you had business in the building.
Mhm.
And getting a marriage license was considered business in the building. And there used to be, there were several courts in town where you could go and get married. And then it's now down to one, which is a justice of peace who has her office in the county building. So we scheduled everything so that we went to the building. We went in, we went through, pandemic security.
Mhm.
Went in, got the licenses, signed the papers, and then the just delightful justice of the peace. We went outside. Just outside the entrance was this little courtyard, which was very pleasant. It was a nice warm day. We had two dear friends as witnesses, and one of them was a professional photographer. So yes, I had planned it that way. And, um, it was just really just a delightful ceremony.
Wow.
It was really nice. It was a nice day, and it was just fine.
Yeah.
We stood far enough away from the witnesses and
Yeah.
the justice so that we didn't wear masks.
Mm.
So when I got to kiss the bride, I actually got to kiss the bride.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just great.
That's so special. Wow. That's wonderful. Well, Skip, I am so grateful for this conversation with you. I really
Oh,
have
no
enjoyed
pleasure.
this. Really have enjoyed it. And thank you all very much for joining us. And if you are not on our email list and would like to join and hear about future interviews, you can email me at ironweedsantafe@gmail.com, and I'll add you to our email list and let you know about future Ironweed projects and interviews coming up. And also, I just want to say a big thank you to Theater Santa Fe, who Skip mentioned earlier, theatersantafe.org. They actually have all of our interviews. This is our 29th. On their website. So you can go to their website, and they've got an online tab, and you can see all of our interviews there as well. So we're very grateful for that. But again, thank you all very much for joining us. Thank you again very much, Skip. And you all stay safe and have a great evening.
I'd just like to say that let's all keep our fingers crossed, because I've already been booked for a 4-show season starting in August with New Mexico Actors Lab at their new space. So let's keep our fingers crossed, and hopefully this aging body will hold up long enough to get me through another summer here.
Fingers crossed. Definitely,
Fingers
Skip.
crossed. All
Thanks
right.
so much.
Thank
Good
you,
night,
Scott.
y'all.
Pleasure.